There is an old rule I have found to be more profitable than most formulas people learn in business school. Keep your mouth shut. That sounds rude. It is not. It is expensive wisdom. Most people think wealth becomes real when it is visible. They think money proves itself through the car, the watch, the neighborhood, the dinner bill, the stories, the confidence, the way a man speaks about his plans as though he were inviting the room to admire them. I have never believed that. Real wealth does not need witnesses. Real strength does not need narration. And one of the costliest mistakes a person can make is confusing financial progress with the urge to announce it. The moment people know too much about your money, your intentions, your advantages, or your family arrangements, your life changes. Not always outwardly at first. Often the shift is subtle, the smile is still there, the friend still shakes your hand. The relative still calls you by the same name, but beneath that surface, the incentives change. That is what people miss. Money does not only change bank accounts, it changes the behavior of everyone who thinks they now stand in relation to your money. And because human nature has not changed very much, that behavior tends to follow old patterns. Envy, competition, entitlement, manipulation, dependence, resentment. This is why I have always believed that silence is not merely a personal style. Silence is strategy. I want to explain that carefully because many people misunderstand what I mean when I say you should be quiet. I do not mean timid. I do not mean passive. I do not mean dishonest. I mean selective. I mean disciplined. I mean knowing that information once released cannot be called back, and that other people do not process your information neutrally. They process it through their needs, their insecurities, their ambitions, and their private frustrations. What sounds to you like harmless sharing may sound to somebody else like an invitation, a challenge, a hierarchy, or that is why I want to walk through the things a smart person should keep private if they want to protect their money, their peace, and their ability to keep compounding without unnecessary friction. Before I get to the specifics, I want you to understand the environment in which all of this takes place. Most people live as though the social world is a warm village. It is not, at least not when money enters the room. A better metaphor is a dark forest. In a dark forest, light gives comfort to the person holding it for about 5 seconds. Then the consequences begin. The light does not merely help you see. It helps others see you. That is the part people forget when they become eager to display wealth, future plans, secret strategies, or family finances. They think disclosure will create admiration, validation, maybe inspiration. Sometimes it does. More often it creates attention from exactly the wrong directions. A dark forest contains predators, competitors, opportunists, imitators, and wounded egos. The problem is not that people are cartoon villains. The problem is that money activates instincts people do not like admitting they have. It changes how they classify you. It changes what they expect from you. It changes whether they see your success as information, opportunity, or insult. There is an old image I think about often put, one crab in a bucket and it might climb out. Put 10 in a bucket, and when one starts climbing, the others pull it back down. That is not because the crabs are developing a coordinated philosophy. It is because creatures under pressure do not like visible escape by one of their own. People are more sophisticated than crabs in language. They are not always more sophisticated in instinct. When you tell a room that you made a great investment, that you are financially free, that you are about to launch a business, that you discovered a useful edge, or that your children will someday inherit a fortune. You may think you are simply sharing. Very often you are rearranging incentives. You are changing how people see themselves in relation to you. And once that relationship changes, their behavior changes. That is why silence protects more than ego. It protects function. It keeps your transactions cleaner. It keeps your friendships more equal. It keeps your plans less crowded by opinion. It keeps your edges from becoming common property. It keeps your family from turning inheritance into theater. And perhaps most importantly, it keeps you from becoming addicted to the external scorecard, the one that asks how your life looks to others instead of whether your life is actually working. The first thing you should never reveal casually is the exact size of your net worth. I consider this one foundational. Once people know your number, they stop seeing you in the same category they used to. You cease to be merely a person with preferences, limitations, priorities, and boundaries. You become, in their imagination, a reservoir of spare capacity. That is dangerous. A person who used to accept your budget suddenly questions it. A person who used to respect your refusal now interprets it as selfishness. A person who used to see you as a peer now sees you as a funding source. This can happen in families, among friends, in neighborhoods, in business dealings, and even in situations as mundane as hiring somebody to repair your roof. The logic is very simple. Information creates leverage, and in ordinary life, other people do not always use that leverage nobly. If a contractor believes you are liquid and wealthy, he may quote differently. If a relative believes you have a large cushion, they may ask differently. If a friend believes you are well ahead, they may judge your choices differently. That is the corrosive part. The number becomes more than a number. It becomes a lens through which every decision you make gets interpreted. Order the cheaper menu item, and you are cheap. Decline a loan, and you are cruel. Choose a modest house, and you are pretending. Say no to covering the group bill, and you are miserly. The right to be ordinary disappears once people classify you as rich in explicit terms. That is why I have always admired the power of appearing more ordinary than you are. There is tremendous advantage in being underestimated. I do not mean play-acting poverty in a theatrical way. I mean maintaining enough ambiguity around your financial life that people do not begin calibrating every interaction around what they think you can afford. Once your financial scale becomes common knowledge, you lose bargaining power, social ease, and often relational balance. So the right habit is not lying. It is vagueness, boring vagueness. If somebody asks how you are doing, you do not need to provide a balance sheet. You can say things are fine. You can say the market has been unpredictable. You can say much of your money is tied up. You can say you are focused on long-term planning. The goal is not deception for fun. The goal is privacy with purpose. A private balance sheet is easier to defend than a public one. The second thing you should keep quiet is your next move. This is one of the most expensive leaks people create in their own lives. They announce the business they are going to start. They announce the property they are going to buy. They announce the promotion they are chasing. They announce the stock they are accumulating. They announce the strategy they are about to deploy. They do all of this before anything is done. Then they wonder why the motivation weakens, why the criticism grows, why the competition stiffens, why the idea begins losing momentum before it ever enters the world. I think this happens for two reasons. The first is internal. Human beings like premature rewards. If you tell people your big plan and they admire you for it, your brain gets some of the emotional payoff before the work has been done. The ego feels fed. The urgency weakens. The person mistakes applause for achievement and loses the appetite required to push through the difficult middle where all real execution lives. That is the soft version of the problem. The harder version is external. The moment people know your intentions, they can interfere with them. Sometimes deliberately, sometimes merely through careless opinion. If a coworker knows you are chasing a role, they may compete differently. If people know the asset you are buying, the price pressure may change. If skeptics know what you are building, they will supply reasons it cannot work. Just at the moment, your idea is still weak and vulnerable. Early plans are fragile. They do not benefit from crowds. They benefit from protection. I have always preferred finished action to announced intention. If you are going to do something, do it. If it is worth doing, it will be hard enough without inviting unnecessary commentary before the work is real. The useful sequence is simple: think in private, move in private. Then let reality speak when it is irreversible. A signed contract is stronger than a speech. A completed purchase is stronger than a forecast. A finished product is stronger than enthusiasm. People love talking because talking is socially rewarded. Markets do not reward talking. Life rarely does either. Life rewards people who carry the burden quietly until the burden becomes visible as outcome. That requires discipline. It also requires a certain tolerance for not being seen during the build phase. That tolerance is more valuable than most people know. The third thing you should guard is your edge. If you have found a method, a pattern, a habit, a niche, a relationship, or a strategic insight that allows you to make money more effectively than most people around you, do not become eager to narrate it. I understand the temptation. The ego wants to prove that success came from intelligence rather than luck. People want credit for the mechanism. They want to reveal the trick. That is usually a mistake. An edge remains valuable partly because it is not common property. The minute an edge becomes broadly known, imitation starts. If imitation becomes large enough, the profit attached to the edge compresses. In financial language, alpha tends to become beta once enough people crowd into it. That principle is not limited to Wall Street. It applies in business, real estate, online commerce, local arbitrage, procurement, niche service industries, and countless ordinary settings where a person finds a little asymmetry that the crowd has not fully noticed yet. Once you explain the asymmetry too widely, you assist in destroying it. I have often thought about Coca-Cola in this way. Its factories matter, its trucks matter, its distribution matters. But one of the most famous things about Coca-Cola is not a visible asset at all. It is a secret. The formula has value because it is defended. That is not superstition. That is economics. Scarcity preserved is profit protected. In a culture dominated by social media, people increasingly do the opposite. They discover a useful method and turn immediately toward monetizing attention around the method. They sell a course, they explain the loophole, they advertise the niche, they publish the trick, then they act surprised when the field becomes crowded and the easy money fades. What happened? They traded a durable edge for temporary applause and a little extra cash. Sometimes that trade is rational if the real business is education and not execution. If your edge still works, your first obligation is to understand it well enough to exploit it, not parade it. Let other people think you got lucky. Let them underestimate the process. Let them misread your results. Being underestimated is much cheaper than training your own future competition. The fourth thing you should keep protected is your inheritance plan. This is the one that often hurts feelings because it concerns the people closest to you. But family is precisely where bad incentives become most corrosive. The moment children or extended relatives begin treating future wealth as known money, character changes, ambition changes, relationships change. The energy of self-construction weakens because the mind starts leaning on anticipated rescue. People do not always say this out loud. They do not need to. The shift can remain entirely subconscious. If a child believes there is a very large fortune waiting no matter what, the pressure to build muscle in the real world declines. Why strain? Why risk? Why persevere? Why tolerate failure? Why become formidable? A silent guarantee can produce a quiet softness. That is dangerous. I have long believed you should leave children enough that they feel they can do something meaningful, but not so much that doing nothing becomes an attractive strategy. That philosophy only works if the exact scale remains vague enough that they must still build themselves. The same applies to siblings, cousins, and broader family structures. The more exact the estate conversation becomes while you are alive, the more likely the people around you are to convert love into accounting. Every unequal distribution becomes a referendum on worth. Every rationale becomes suspect. Every gathering becomes potentially political. Family members begin negotiating for emotional position instead of simply relating to one another. This is how wealth poisons families before a single dollar has even changed hands. A wise person handles these matters lawfully, clearly, and privately. The documents should exist. The intentions should be coherent. The professionals should know what they need to know. But there is very little gain in turning the family into an audience for the spreadsheet. It rarely produces gratitude. More often it produces comparison, expectation, and simmering conflict. The best inheritance many parents can protect is not only money, it is hunger. It is dignity. It is the sense that a child must still become somebody under their own power. Money can help later. It should not become a sedative early. The fifth thing you should stop broadcasting is your virtue. This includes charity, generosity, and personal grievance. I group them together because they are all forms of emotional display directed toward an audience. Modern culture encourages this constantly. People do a small good deed and then advertise it. They suffer a setback and then narrate it in public. They help someone and then make sure the story circulates. They want moral credit, sympathy credit, or identity credit. In every case, the outer scorecard becomes the target. I have never trusted that instinct. If you do something good and immediately feel the need to announce it, ask yourself who the announcement is really serving. Maybe it helps others. Fine, often it mainly serves your ego. It converts a private act of character into a public search for applause. The same is true of grievance. Many people believe that broadcasting their troubles will produce relief. Sometimes it does. Just as often it trains them to seek witness instead of remedy. They become storytellers about their pain instead of managers of it. I prefer a stronger posture, help quietly when possible. Give without theater, solve more than you speak. Do not hand the world unnecessary maps of your vulnerability. This does not mean never ask for help. It means do not confuse exposure with strength. There is a dignity in becoming the sort of person who can carry out generous acts without needing spectators, and who can carry difficulties without turning them into a public identity. That dignity becomes part of your internal scorecard. It hardens character. It reduces the dependence on external reaction. And that independence is one of the great hidden forms of wealth. Now step back and look at what all 5 silences have in common. Each one protects you from a different kind of leakage. Revealing your net worth leaks negotiating power and relational equality. Revealing your next move leaks momentum and invites interference. Revealing your edge leaks profit. Revealing your inheritance plan leaks family health. Revealing your virtue leaks inner strength into outer performance. People think secrecy is mainly about concealment. In finance, secrecy is often about preserving function. It keeps the world from leaning on parts of your life that should remain load-bearing and private. You can think of it as building a fortress if you like, but I prefer a simpler image. Compounding is a delicate machine. Anything that introduces extra friction reduces what the machine can do over time. Envy is friction. Entitlement is friction. Premature praise is friction. Copycats are friction. Family politics are friction. Ego display is friction. Silence removes friction. That is why it is so valuable. The loudest person in the room is often paying for attention with future efficiency. The quiet person is usually conserving energy for actual results. There is another point worth making, because some people hear advice like this and think it sounds dark. They say, should I distrust everyone? That is not the right interpretation. The right interpretation is more mature than that. Trust people with what belongs to their role. Tell your accountant what your accountant needs to know. Tell your attorney what your attorney needs to know. Tell your spouse what your spouse needs to know. Tell your physician what your physician needs to know. But do not confuse intimacy, friendship, proximity, or shared blood with unlimited claim on every piece of strategic information in your life. Not every truth serves every relationship equally well. That is just reality. Some truths belong in the legal file. Some belong in the marriage. Some belong only in your own head until the work is done. Wise people do not speak everything they know, simply because they are capable of saying it. They understand timing, audience, and consequence. And that, in a way, is what mature wealth is. Not just the possession of money, the possession of judgment. A rich fool can still talk himself into poverty. A disciplined person can protect very large value simply by refusing to satisfy the ego's constant demand to be seen, praised, and confirmed. That is the deeper message I want to leave you with. Silence is not weakness. Silence is delayed power. Silence is unspent leverage. Silence is the refusal to let other people's needs, envies, or opinions become an unnecessary tax on your future. So if you want to keep building, keep more things dark, let your balance sheet stay private. Let your next move arrive without advance notice. Let your edge keep working before you explain it. Let your family inherit structure without inheriting corrosive expectation. Let your acts of kindness belong to your conscience more than to your audience. In the end, the world does not need a running commentary on your life. It only needs the evidence. Build quietly, move quietly, compound quietly. Then one day the results will be so obvious that you will not have to say a word at all.